Welcome, everybody, to Hot Takes on the Lake. I'm Josh, and I'm joined by your host, as always, Nick. We are two lifelong Browns fans that are going to be talking about the Browns' home opener game against the Jets today, where they unfortunately lost in spectacular fashion, 31 to 30. And we're gonna have a lot to jump into and talk about for this game, so we're just gonna get right into it. But Nick, how you doing today?
I was doing well, Josh, about 45 minutes to an hour ago. Well, the thing is, do we have to talk about this game? Do we really have to talk about it? Um, eh, just going through the years of us being Browns fans. Obviously, there have been some heartbreaking defeats, and there's been a lot of games like this where it. If any other team would have been in our situation, they would have closed the game out and they wouldn't have blown it. Um, but I really can't remember a game where I've been this just pissed off after a game because I mean, at least in the years past, if this would have happened, it's like okay, well, we're gonna go like 3-13 anyways. So I mean, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But this team absolutely played their ass off, at least offensively. Good enough to win this game. And the team has a lot of talent on there, and the team is actually good. So I mean, it just hurts all that more where you're just like you're up by two scores with under 2 minutes left, and you still somehow find a way to lose. And I know the expression is old now, but I mean that's just old Brown stuff. That's just stuff that we've seen for the past 20 years. Unfortunately, we can't. We'll get into more detail about it, but um, we're gonna have to find a solution to this because we can't keep doing this week in and week out, just giving up big plays. When we have the lead late in the game. So
Yeah.
it's just beyond frustrating to put it lightly.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to go over the whole game, but I think that obviously because of the way it ended, we got to start with the ending. And basically, just to recap it, we just passed the 2 minute warning at the end of the game. The Browns run it in and score a touchdown. Nick Chubb gets his third touchdown of the game. And then Cade York comes out and his first missed kick of the year, first missed kick of his NFL career so far, misses the extra point. And at that point, that's when the kind of the beginning of the end started for the Browns in this game. And right after that happened, you kind of called it. We were texting each other, and you're like, watch us lose 31-30, and that's what happened exactly. And from there, the offense did not again see the ball until we were down 31-30. So we score 17 to 30, and we give them the ball with under the 2 minute warning. They did have no timeouts because they used them all on us. So we give them the ball. They go down. They immediately, another huge pass play score for Joe Flacco. And I believe that one was that to Corey Davis. I think that one went to
Mm-hmm.
a huge, like 70+ yard bomb, touchdown, blown coverage, just like last week against the Panthers. And at that point, you're still thinking, okay, well, that was ridiculous, but we should still be fine here as long as we get the onside kick. And then, the Jets kick one of the wildest looking onside kicks I've ever seen. And they get the ball back there, and then they march right back down the field, score a touchdown, get the extra point, and take the lead. And it was kind of just like so quick. You're like, what the hell just happened? The Browns get the ball back, one timeout, 22 seconds. They do a decent job getting down the field. They had still their timeout left. They could have gotten one or two more plays to set up another long field goal for the win, but then Jacoby makes his first big mistake of the season, throwing a pick to end the game. So it was just like this domino effect, all cascading from the Cade York missed extra point. So my first question I just want to say is, from that whole sequence, who on the Brown side do you think needs to take the majority or the lion's share of the blame for how this went down? Offensively, defensively, Cade York, the coaches, where do you think the majority of the blame should lie?
Well, first off, I'm going to excuse Cade York. I mean, obviously, yes, his job is to kick the ball, and he's supposed to make those extra points. I know extra points nowadays are not like they used to be back in the day. They're a little harder now. They're not just gimme points. Um, but still, you were still up by two scores. I'm not going to blame the offense because Jacoby Brissett, besides that one play, where he was just trying to make a play. I mean, honestly, yeah, he hit a nice run. He maybe could have gone underneath to somebody and, like you said, set up another long game-winning field goal for Cade York. But still, he's trying to make a play, and so far we've seen him for the first two games be very accurate and very secure with the ball. So he hasn't been forcing anything. So I'm not going to blame him. Obviously, the other offensive players, Nick Cho was just unbelievable today. Can't put any blame there. Um, it's gonna have to be it's gonna have to be solely on the defense. It's just I don't know who to blame because um, I had mentioned on Twitter that yes, as frustrated as the past couple of seasons has been with Joe Woods as the defensive coordinator at times, um, clearly clearly he's not scheming guys to get wide open. He's not scheming Robbie Anderson to get wide open or Corey Davis to just have a wide open walk-in touchdown. Clearly, there's miscommunication on the defense. Guys don't know what they're doing. Um, I know we have like the second youngest team in the NFL. I understand there's a lot of youth, but I mean, there's guys who have been there. Denzel Ward has been there a while. John Johnson is a veteran, for God's sakes. Ronnie Harrison's been in the league a few years. Um, Grant Delpit is a young guy still trying to, make his mark in the league, and I see him a lot of times being the guy. Whoever the guy is wide open, he's usually the guy closest to him. So I don't mean again, I'm not an X's and O's guy. I said that on Twitter. Um, if I'm completely wrong on it, then I'll address that later. Obviously, I'm more than happy to eat crow, but Joe Woods can only do so much. He can't sit there and hold their hands every single play and say, "Okay, Denzel, this is what you're doing." Okay, Greg Newsome, this is what you're doing. You have to know your job. You're a professional, getting paid all this money. You're supposed to do one job. You're supposed to know what you're supposed to do out there, and clearly there's a breakdown somewhere. So I'm gonna have to put it on the players more than Joe Woods. Um, I know people are just calling for his head right now, and I understand. Again, besides those plays, there have been things that I'm not happy with Joe Woods as well. Just the lack of blitzing at times, really only rushing four guys, just at odd times too, is really been a major criticism of him from me. But I think just when you look at the tape, it's just a lack of communication and guys not knowing what to do out there.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you for the most part. I think offensively, and I've said this in previous years too on the show, but if your offense is scoring at least 30 points, it's very hard to blame them for a loss. Even if they have the ball at the end of the game and they can't get it done, if they've put up the points on the scoreboard throughout the game to get you to this position, it's hard to blame them. So when I look at, like Jacoby Brissett throwing that interception at the end of the game, of course you don't want to see that happen. And a small part of you thinks if that was Deshaun Watson out there, would that have happened, But being in the situation we're in, if you watch that last play, the Jets dropped everyone into coverage except one defensive lineman. So it's like they knew what they were doing and what they had to do in that situation, and he's just trying to make a desperation play at the end of the game. I'm sure he wants that back, but I'm not going to sit here and blame him for that. His first and only interception so far through these first two games was that play. So he made basically no other mistakes in this game. He didn't have like a lot of overthrows like we saw last week. I thought we saw huge improvement for him this week, especially the connection with him and Cooper. It seems like they're getting now. Cooper had 9 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. That's awesome. That's one of the best, receiving stat lines we've seen on the Browns in a long time. So that was all great. And then Cade York, like you said, of course you don't want him to miss that extra point, but let's be realistic. If he hits that extra point and everything still goes the same, the Jets score there at the end of that game, do we not think they're going for a 2-point conversion? And do we not, do we have the confidence in our defense to stop a 2-point conversion? Because I don't. And I feel like the game would have played out exactly the same, except with a 2-point conversion, getting them to win. So I'm not even going to blame York that much on that. Our defense, it's absolutely just inexcusable to have 2 straight drives in the last 2 minutes where they allow a touchdown, 14 points. And I guess you can't really blame the defense for the onside kick, but obviously that falls more on special teams. I don't know who exactly that was that missed the onside kick ball there. But yeah, just absolutely ridiculous on the defensive side. This whole game, bad on the defensive side. Clowney had the strip sack fumble recovery. That was awesome. But besides that one play, the defense offered our team nothing in this game. I'm going to look through the stats quickly here, but there were almost no big plays. The pass coverage was terrible. Joe Flacco, our defense was bad, but I got to give Joe Flacco credit. I mean, he threw 44 times with no interceptions. I don't care how bad of a defense you're facing. That's a feat. That's something good. And 4 touchdowns, 307 yards. Like that, he looked like a top 15 quarterback in the league. And I had written him off. Most people have written him off, and it seems he can still be pretty good, if he wants to. So if he wants to keep playing, so kudos to him. And then going back into the defensive side for the Browns, we did have the sack from Clowney, and then it looks like Myles Garrett did get the 1 sack as well. I thought he did. I was looking to confirm that. So they each got their 1 sack in the game, but besides that, there was really nothing going on the defensive side.
Yeah, and like you said, special teams, yes, you have to recover the onside kick, but the defense had 2 drives at the end of the game where they could have gotten a stop, and they failed. So that's solely on them. Onside kicks are weird anyways. I mean, yeah, most times people don't get it, but obviously, just the football being the way it is, kicked a certain way, especially that he kicked it on that side too. It was just laying flat. It's going to take a crazy bounce every now and then, and, that can happen, but you're absolutely right. Even if Cade York makes that extra point, I'm not even confident we could have given up another big play in overtime. If we would have gone to OT, we could have easily lost the game there too. So I just look at the defense having two drives at the end of the game where they, absolutely could have put the game away, could have won it, and they failed. Again, I just have to say, Jacoby Brissett, no blame on him. He's just trying to make a play. He had a couple of really nice runs. I joked with you. He was looking like Michael Vick in Madden 04 out there, just kind of spitting out of trouble, making guys miss, and then that long run to set up a closer opportunity to get a field goal at the end of the game. Nick Chubb, I saw a couple of people saying that, instead of scoring his 3rd touchdown, he should have gone down. It's like, I completely disagree. I mean, if it was maybe a 3-point game, I could understand. But no, you're going up by what you think is 2 touchdowns. And your defense should get a stop. They shouldn't, I mean, at the very least, even if they would have scored on that first to last drive that they had, even if we would have made them take more time, they only had a timeout, or if they might have even used their last one, honestly. So I really can't fault Nick Chubb there. I think that's more of just being hindsight 2020, like, well, you should have gone down. Yeah, it's like, okay, you're only saying that because we blew the game. You don't,
exactly.
You don't expect to give up 14 points in 1 minute and 55 seconds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Myles Garrett got his sack, but I mean, he kind of disappeared for most of this game. Clowney, he was playing well. He was, getting in there, but he got hurt, wasn't able to come back in. But besides that, the defense really offered nothing. I don't have the stats here in front of me, but every single 3rd down for the majority of the game, it was like, okay, doesn't matter how long it is, they're going to get it. Someone's going to be wide open. Or obviously they're going to catch it short, and we're just not going to tackle because we're just looking at the tape. We're just one of the worst tackling teams I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
Just a lot of arm tackling, a lot of just kind of diving for people's legs, and they're just able to truck right through it. So this falls solely on the defense. I completely agree with you. If your team puts up 30 points, you should win the game. Absolutely.
Yeah. And just real quick on that 3rd down, the Jets did go 8 for 15 in 3rd down. So not you look at that and it's pretty average stat, but I mean, if you're going against a team that you think you should be easily beating, 8 for 15 is way too many 3rd down conversions you're allowing, in my opinion. That should have been way lower. We should have been dominating 3rd down, and we were letting them have everything. And like you said earlier, I don't know if that's more from a scheming perspective of the plays we were calling that weren't aggressive enough, or if it was the play. We were texting about it during the game, but it seemed like every time we're in man-to-man, we're a pretty good defensive secondary team. But anytime we're in a zone, it's like all of our players are just standing there and like don't know what's going on, and you either have a blown coverage or they just wait for the receiver to catch it and then go tackle him. And we've become over the last few years a much better tackling team. I mean, I remember back in the 5-6 years ago, the days where we just could not tackle anybody. So we've become a pretty good tackling team. Our defensive secondary has gotten better at that, but you can't just let them catch it and then tackle them every single time. You got to make more aggressive stops, and those just weren't there. And I did also want to give credit to our offense. Our running game was good today. I mean, it had a total of over 100 yards, but Nick Chubb under 100 yards, Kareem Hunt under 100 yards. They ran it 30 times total combined. Nick Chubb did not get over 20 carries. So it wasn't like a huge rushing game, but it wasn't this big problem. Like our passing game did step up, Jacoby Brissett and the receivers. We already talked about Cooper, but Harrison Bryant, had a few more catches as we always joke about. Njoku also got in there though with a few catches. No catches for Peoples Jones though this game, which is disappointing. He only had one target, but overall, as a passing game, we did step up. And again, it's hard to blame our offense for anything because I thought they played pretty well. I think this was just an overall defensive failure. And we're going to quickly talk about the Thursday game coming up here as well and all that. But what I'll just quickly say is I hope, I had hoped week 1 was like the wake up call facing a bad team and barely beating them that we gave up a lead. Like, okay, now you realize you have to play all 4 quarters. It obviously wasn't. And so I hope now actually losing to what's presumably going to be a bad team, a single digit win team, this kind of makes us realize that we have to play harder later in these games.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about it when we were previewing the season that these first 4 games were really, I mean, there's a good opportunity to maybe 4-0 is a little wishful thinking, but, at least be competitive in all 4 of these games because they're not good teams. So it just hurts to lose this one, especially like you said with the offense playing so well. And I thought it would kind of be the opposite. I thought the theme would be the defense would be holding their own and the offense would kind of stall out, just with, having Brissett limited as a quarterback. But it was the complete opposite. He carried the team. He was very accurate, like I said, didn't force anything. Chubb and Hunt has struggled at times running the ball. They were kind of loading up the box, and then side to side wasn't really, their sideline to sideline wasn't really working either. And then, yeah, Cooper had a big game, finally got him involved. But again, it just falls solely on the defense, and it just seems like, it's not every play, but whenever the other team has to make a play, somebody's just wide open. It's not even like, oh, he throws it in traffic and some guy just makes a spectacular catch. It's like, no, someone's wide open, nobody's around them, and then they run from their 10 to 15 yards.
Yeah.
And again, that could be scheming, but then you have like the big plays like to Robbie Anderson and Corey Davis where it's clear that, yes, there's a communication breakdown somewhere. Somebody's not talking. Somebody clearly doesn't know what to do, what coverage to be in. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly one person to blame. It's just the defense as a collective. I mean, you can't expect this from the offense every single game, I think. I mean, it's hard to be this consistent with, the lack of great receivers outside of Cooper. And you can't just run Chubb and Hunt 30 times each game. Yeah. So the defense is going to have to step up. They're going to have to clean this up, and something's going to give. I don't know if somebody's going to lose their job over this, but somebody needs to get their ass chewed out for it because it's just unacceptable that it happened 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think big picture wise, it is week 2. And, these things can be cleaned up, especially when you talk about communication and those things throughout the year. But, we don't have a lot of room for error. And I think that's maybe the main reason why I didn't take this loss as like, oh my God, the world is ending. Just because, like, when you look at big picture, we did both predict like the Browns to not even make the playoffs this year. And I'm not saying the whole season's already just a waste or thrown away. And it does suck to lose this game. But at the end of the day, I didn't expect us to come out and be a 13-4, football team this year. And these games were going to happen. I didn't think it'd be against the Jets, but or in this fashion. But these games are going to happen, especially during the first stretch of the year. And hopefully we can just get those things figured out. If we're seeing these same mistakes week after week bleeding into mid-season and then even to late season with Watson back, if we're seeing these same defensive errors, then yeah, that's a really big problem. We have to make some changes. But I don't think anyone should be on the hot seat per se, or something so dramatic just yet. I think I have a little bit more patience just because of the situation that we're in. Anything else you wanted to say on that front?
I'll just add really quickly that I'm not advocating for anybody to lose their job at this point. Again, you have to look, 10 weeks down the line, and if, like you said, if the same problems are still happening and nothing's being fixed, then you have to address that. But it is just a very discouraging that, it just seems to happen, late in the game when you have the lead, we're just going to give up a big play. It's almost inevitable at this point. So, like I said, something's got to give. There has to be something that, Joe Woods can do out there just to have everybody be on the same page. Like I said, this is the youngest team in the NFL, or the youngest team in the AFC at least. So I know there's a learning curve, but there's still guys out there that have been veterans. It's not like you have all rookies on the defense. This shouldn't be happening week after week. So,
Yeah.
hopefully it's just something we clean up. If not, it doesn't matter if Deshaun Watson's back. The defense is just going to keep on giving up big plays, and it's going to be a struggle even when we have better quarterback play.
Absolutely. And the last thing I wanted to say too on that, we're going to talk more about this as we shift over into the Thursday game preview, but this happens in the NFL. And I know it feels like it always happens to the Browns, but this happens in the NFL. Teams blow leads. They should win the game and they lose. And just as an example, right here in the AFC North today, the Ravens went into the fourth quarter against the Dolphins up 35-14. And I don't think any Ravens fan is thinking they're losing that game. They end up getting outscored 28-3 in the fourth quarter and lose to the Dolphins. Like these things happen, and a lot of people would probably say they think the Ravens are a much better team than the Browns. I wouldn't necessarily say they're a lot better, but a lot of people are going to say that, and that's not an excuse for us to do this. I'm just saying this type of stuff happens in the NFL, and it really sucks, but I just hope that it can kind of be a wake-up call as we have this short week going into Thursday for our defense especially. And with that happening with the Ravens, the Steelers, who were facing on Thursday, also lost to the Patriots, and they did not look very good in that game. I saw a little bit on the internet of people already calling for Mitch Trubisky to be benched, which, I think is kind of ridiculous. I don't think he's good, but, they're 1-1. And then the Bengals lost in week 1, so even if they win their current game against the Cowboys, no one in the division is going to be 2-0. It's still a competitive division, and if we win on Thursday, that our first divisional game, we could very well be the leaders of the AFC North, even with our current situation. So that's why I'm not freaking out a little bit too much. But does this game suck that we dropped it in this manner? It was absolutely ridiculous, absolutely. But I'm ready to just kind of flush it. And it's kind of a good thing, I think, that we're in a short week this week because you can kind of flush it, move on, and hopefully we win on Thursday, which we're going to talk about here, because if we don't win on Thursday, man, that's going to be a double whammy. 2 bad losses in 1 week. So yeah, anything else you want to say about this game before we move on?
No, yeah, like I said, I'm just ready to get the bad taste out of my mouth. Like I said, it just sucks more when the team is still, even with Brissett as quarterback, they're still a halfway decent team. They still have a lot of talent
A
out there.
good
It's
team,
not
yeah.
like, yeah, it's not like this team is garbage and you don't have a chance to make the playoffs anyways. But it still hurts nonetheless. But you're right. It's just it'll be nice if we can get this win early. It just gets the bad taste out of our mouth even sooner. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Hopefully.
Yeah, and I think what'll suck most about this game, more so than today in the direct aftermath, is if we end up exceeding expectations, if we end up, 11-6, 12-5, and we fall a half a game or 1 game out of the playoffs, or a half game, 1 game out of the division, winning the division, and we look back to this week 2 game and be like, wow, if we would have just won that game, it'd have been much different. But that's a whole lot of forecasting for now to we'll really jump in the head. But I think this game will be one we will look back on with regret if we end up in that situation. But just got to move forward, and this Thursday we are at home again against the Pittsburgh Steelers, first division game of the year. First of, I think, only 2 primetime games for the Browns this year. This is on Thursday night, so if you're not in the Cleveland or Pittsburgh area, then you're going to have to watch this on Amazon Prime, but for us, I'm sure it'll be on one of the channels here locally. And yeah, I can't remember the last time the Browns were on Thursday night off the top of my head, but it's always nice to see something different, a little bit of a different primetime game for the Browns. What's your kind of just like initial expectation going up against the Steelers, who did get an upset win in overtime last week against the Bengals, but then lost to the Patriots today?
That's the thing. You alluded to it, that people are already calling for Mitch Trubisky to be benched. I think, unfortunately for Steelers fans, that's your best option because you have a rookie in Kenny Pickett, who has small hands and has to wear 2 gloves when he throws the ball, or you have Mason Rudolph, who I think we've seen plenty from Mason Rudolph to know that he is not the heir apparent to Ben Roethlisberger. So from the quarterback position, I'm not too worried about it. Even without T.J. Watt, it just always seems like Pittsburgh always has a tough defense, even if they don't have the star power, like the high level talent that they usually do in years past. They always just play their ass off, and they play really hard. They're always a tough team. So I'm gonna be looking just to see, honestly, the run game. I think they're gonna be really keen on that. I don't think Jacoby Brissett even, but if you know, I don't think even though he's played well the first two games, I don't really think that they're worried about him. I think they're still going to make him beat them, and they're just going to key on stopping Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt because that really is, the engine that runs this offense. Um, and obviously, just seeing the defense again because if you leave guys wide open, even Mitch Trubisky is going to be able to hit them and make big plays because they have Chase Claypool, who's not a bad wide receiver. Fryermuth is a good tight end. Najee Harris is a good running back. Their line is not great, so we can maybe key on that. But still, in the passing game, giving up big plays against any team in the NFL is just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't really following it, so you might know more than me. I know T.J. Watt got hurt. What's the exact situation on that? Is that something long term, or what happened to him?
I can't remember. I think he tore his pec. They were originally saying like he would be out for the rest of the year, but he got like a second and third opinion. So now I think it's just like 6 weeks he's going to be out.
Oh, okay.
So he'll at least be out for this game, but then when we play him again, he'll definitely be back then. So
Okay.
it's not as bad as I initially thought, but um, still this week it's going to be a big up for us not having him on the other side because he just always seems to wreak havoc against us.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, obviously you don't want to see anyone hurt, but him not being on the field is going to definitely give our offense a break in this game. And I was just looking over quickly the stats for the Steelers so far for these first 2 weeks, and at least offensively, it is not impressive. Which I mean, that was kind of my thoughts going into the season on the Steelers. That offensively, it's not going to be impressive, and they're going to be relying a lot on their defense. So having Watt out, I'm sure, is really hurting them. Only scored 14 points today, one touchdown of that 14 points against the Patriots, and then obviously last week they did get the upset, but I believe they only scored 23 points in that one as well. I'll go see how many of that was touchdowns also, but yeah, not very impressive on the offensive side. So hopefully that will give our defense kind of a good reset. But going into this game against the Jets, I would have thought that this was a good game for our defense to be, highlighted. So they're really going to have to step up if they want to do good against the Steelers. What is kind of a key player or key thing you're looking for on the Browns side in this game?
It's going to be the secondary, honestly. It's going to be the secondary, one, not to give up wide open big plays, and also just to clean up. I mean, just like I said, they just always seem to find the soft spot in the zone, and guys are just wide open. And then the secondary, as far as tackling goes, has been really suspect the first two games. So not limiting those yards after catch because you have guys like Deontay Johnson, Claypool, George Pickens out of Georgia is a great young rookie. You get these guys in space and they can really burn you. So that's really what I'm looking for is to not obviously clamp down on not leave guys wide open, but also the yards after catch is really going to be an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of on a negative key to watch, but I'm going to say Grant Delpit specifically for sure. I mean, I don't know what's been going on with him recently. If he needs to kind of, obviously they're going to study the tape and go over it, but he needs to make adjustments because it seems like every time there's a blown coverage, he's one of the guys involved. And then I'm also going to go with Myles Garrett. Is he going to be able to have a good game against, a Mitch Trubisky and be able to get multiple sacks like he did in week one? And not only that, but I just feel like overall our defensive front, especially Myles Garrett, just had so much like pressure in that first game that they put on the quarterback. Even when they weren't getting the sack, you would see two guys blocking Garrett and him still pushing them back into Mayfield. And then today against the Jets, you didn't really see that at all. I mean, Joe Flacco had a clean pocket most of the game. On the plays that he wasn't getting sacked, he wasn't really getting hit that much either. So hopefully, just overall, we can create that pressure on Trubisky. So far, they're rushing with Najee Harris is not looking very impressive either. So even that shouldn't really be a problem. I think it's a good chance for our defense to kind of get back into the good graces of the Browns fans after they were essentially booed off the field today in the home opener.
Yeah, and I saw Myles Garrett had a quote after the game that it was disappointing, but I tweeted out, I'm like, well, yeah, what do you expect? Them just to go like, oh shit, well, all right, guys, well,
Yeah,
you tried
you
your
tried.
hardest, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, no, you gave up 14 points in under 2 minutes, and it's the second week in a row you just left guys wide open just to walk in the end zone. It's like, no,
Yeah.
people are gonna boo, they're frustrated, so it's completely understandable. And yeah, Myles Garrett's another one that I need to look for because like you said, that first game, even if we weren't sacking Mayfield on every play, he had, not clean pockets. He was kind of running all over the place for his life at times. And Joe Flacco just had pretty much all day to throw. And a lot of times, Miles Garrett wasn't even coming in until third down. So really, your best pass rusher out there was Clowney because again, with Joe Woods, he doesn't like to blitz all the time. So, you pretty much just have Clowney out there trying to do it all. And then when he went out, then you're really screwed. Miles is having to pull double duty out there. So that's really going to be a key because, like I said, even if Mitch Trubisky, whatever you think about him, if you give him time to throw and leave guys open, he's going to find them. So it always starts up front, limiting the run, which I think we can because, like I said, their offensive line is not great even though Najee Harris is a good running back. Um, but just not giving him any time to throw and just making a messy pocket for him, I think is really going to help out the secondary, which has been struggling so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And then on the offensive side, I do just want to see how our team kind of is able to keep up now that we've had a game where we weren't super strong in the rushing and we had to rely more on the passing, and then in the first game it was kind of reversed. I'm just kind of more so curious to see how Stefanski's going to continue to call this offense while Brissett's still in there, because he has shown that he's able to be pretty competent, not make a ton of mistakes, but at the same time you don't want to get too far away from the run game. Would you expect more of us taking advantage of the Steelers in the run game or the pass game on Thursday?
I would say for any team, it has to be the run game. Again, you alluded to earlier that Chubb was under 20 carries, and that was pretty much the low ball benchmark that we said, yeah, at least get him 20 carries a game, maybe more towards like 25 or so. Um, so yeah, I think definitely get Chubb more carries, get Hunt involved in the passing game more. I feel like we don't use him out of the backfield enough in the passing game. Chubb is good there too, but Kareem Hunt really is dangerous when you get him in the open field like that. So, um, I think again, just the benchmark has to be 20 carries for Chubb, and you saw it. I mean, he was struggling at times. Again, the line was not giving him a lot of holes at times. They were kind of keying on that, but he's able to make plays and just fight for extra yards, and he scored 3 touchdowns out of it today. So I think you just keep
Yeah.
giving him the ball, and good things are going to happen.
Yeah, week one, not any touchdowns, but a lot of yards. This week was kind of flipped. Still had 80 something yards, not, over 100, but 3 touchdowns. And even though he was struggling at times during the game, his last rush of the game was a huge run for a touchdown. So, I mean, you definitely got to keep going that way for sure. Overall, I mean, besides obviously the X factor of Mike Tomlin, I don't see many things to watch out for on the Steelers side. I know Minkah Fitzpatrick has had a great year, and he's a great player. Already had multiple interceptions in their first 2 games, so that does worry me a little bit with Brissett, but hopefully he seems to be, not too mistake prone so far, so hopefully that continues. But I'll go first with my prediction for the score. I think this is a really important game to win. If you're able to win this game and then 10 days later against the Falcons and go 3-1, if you want to be competitive at all the rest of the season, it's very important because the first slate of games here, the first month of games, is much easier than your next, 4 to 6 games or so. So I'm going to go with the Browns winning this one. I don't think it's going to be very high scoring, though, so I'm going to go 17-14 Browns. But I think if you lose this one, and then it's really going to put pressure on that game against the Falcons. If you end up 1-3 or even 2-2, not going to be great when you have a lot of these tough games coming up. So this is a must-win, not only because it's a divisional game at home, but because of those reasons too. What about you?
I'll kind of do the same thing. I don't think it'll be too high scoring. I'll go like 21-13. I think it'll be a close game only because of Pittsburgh's defense. I still think they're, like you said, Minkah Fitzpatrick in the secondary is really going to be a problem, and I think they're just going to be keying heavy on stopping the run game. And again, I don't have a ton of confidence in their offense. If we don't give up big plays, I think we can stop Najee Harris on the ground. So I think it'll kind of be a defensive struggle for a little bit, but I think we'll pull it out. And like you said, it is a must win for sure. Especially because after these first 4 games, it gets a lot tougher. There are some tough teams on the schedule. There's some teams right now that we play later in the year that aren't looking great right now, but we play them at the second half of the year where they're going to get into their rhythm, they're going to get going. Like Tampa Bay, the Saints, the Chargers is going to be a tough game too. The Patriots always play us tough as well. Buffalo is going to be a nightmare of a game, I feel like. So really, I mean, this is a good opportunity to get some wins early on, get some confidence. So this is definitely a must win for me as well.
All right, and do you have any final thoughts for the game on Thursday?
Um, win. Just win. That's all.
Yeah, fair
It's
enough.
simple. Just win.
Yeah, you already know people are going to be talking about the Browns in this embarrassing loss because anytime it happens to the Browns, it has to be talked about extra. So they're all going to be
Hmm.
talking about this one, but the Browns at least have the opportunity to on prime time on Thursday night. Get that bad taste out of not only our mouths but everyone nationally and get a divisional win against the Steelers. So hopefully they can get that done. We are not going to be live streaming that game, but we will be talking about it. Obviously, the recap in our next episode. And then the Browns are not going to be playing next Sunday, so they're going to be playing the Sunday after that, so we'll be back to talk about that game against the Falcons as well. But in the meantime, whether you're listening on a podcast platform or watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe so you can catch all of our episodes of Hot Takes on the Lake.
Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in again and letting us rant about this horrible, frustrating game. Um, on Twitter, you can follow us at Hot Takes 216. All other social media is Hot Takes on the Lake. For Josh, I'm Nick. Go Browns and please, just win. That's all we ask for. Just win.